Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how tons of new Star Fox info for Nintendo Switch 2 has just been revealed. So yesterday, preview coverage came out for Star Fox, and from this preview coverage we've learned a lot of very interesting things here, but also Nintendo put out, yes, technically, a new trailer for Star Fox. Now, I did talk about this trailer a little bit in yesterday's video. For the most part, this trailer looks like basically just a cut from the Star Fox Nintendo Direct, and it pretty much is, but there is a little bit more. If you watch through, you might notice that there's a few bits of extended footage, a few extra bits of frames here and there. You might see them go a little bit later into a level, a little bit earlier into a level. You'll hear more of the sound effects of the game, more of the voice acting. So there are some little new things in this trailer. And, as I mentioned yesterday, straight up significant new info about the multiplayer. We learned about abilities that you'll have in the multiplayer, such as having a hyper boost, which allows you to just boost around really quickly and do a bunch of tricks and such, a force field, which obviously seems to protect you to some extent, and a plaza blast, a giant beam you can aim and shoot around. It destroys everything. And we've seen a little bit more of this footage from preview coverage, but there's even more. So just keep in mind that I'm going to be talking about footage from Nintendo Life, from Video Games Chronicle, and IGN, all of which will be linked in the description below. But there are actually other power-ups that weren't in the Star Fox trailer that we saw from preview coverage. So beyond these three, there are also Smart Mines, there's a teleport ability, and max rockets. And perhaps there could even be more. I wonder with these max rockets, because you get a lot of them at once, if they're really good for homing in on multiple enemies. The teleport ability seems to be something that's useful for getting you to a particular zone very quickly. Hyper Boost seems really useful for when you're trying to catch up to some people from behind and set yourself up with some really good positioning. Smart Mines, I feel like, just make a decent amount of sense. You're going to place them in certain positions, and if someone passes by it in close enough proximity, it will cause damage. But it's not just these abilities we learned out in the multiplayer. There is more we learned from coverage. So another example, there's kind of like damage tracking. So when you're playing through the main campaign and you're crashing into a wall or you're getting hit, you're going to see the UI actually reflect on the bottom left where you're taking damage, and it's going to give you an understanding of the health of your R-Wing. Like in prior games, yeah, your wing could break or something like that after you get enough damage in a particular part, but this shows a better tracking of it. I'm not sure how much this would actually impact gameplay, but it's definitely at least a really cool detail. Something that I think is going to impact gameplay though, and this is just something that seems to be a common sentiment amongst all the impressions of the previews here, and that's that the controls feel very precise, in the sense that it feels like you can make more subtle movements now, more meaningful movements, and everything feels snappy and fluid. This version of Star Fox plays and feels a lot better, and a lot of people are reporting that they have a greater sense of control over the R-Wing compared to prior Star Fox games, including Star Fox 64, what this game is a remake of, at least in terms of the campaign. And this extra level of precision with the controls does also benefit the multiplayer. Having a better control of your R-Wing, so you can better position yourself to attack or avoid attacks and do different things, and so it doesn't feel so repetitive when you're doing just the same movement or trick every time. People are saying it's making a difference here. It feels a lot better to play. And you know, another common sentiment, and perhaps this one's even more prevalent, is just how much more the graphics are adding to the experience here. So many have been reporting, and we did make mention of this when Nintendo showed off that cockpit gameplay going through Corneria, but Corneria really does feel like you're flying through a city that's been through a great devastation now. Like, the atmosphere is in your face with the smoke and the fire and the particles and the debris, but also the environment feels responsive as well, in the sense that when there are explosions, you see those flashes. When shots are fired, you see different parts of the environment lighting up, your shadow being casted. And it's actually really interesting, because we're even hearing that this environment feels claustrophobic, but in a good way. As it should, because you're literally flying through a metropolis with so much going on. It doesn't feel like that in the original depiction of Corneria. And so even though they have remade the levels from structurally one-to-one here, all the visual effects and details are creating a far more immersive experience and making it feel a lot more meaningful. But also, there's something else very cool that's going on here with the story. Nintendo's already told us that we're going to learn more about the Star Fox world with these new cutscenes, and we've been given a little bit more insight as to how that will be impacting things. Like, we're seeing that, yeah, the characters have different voice lines during the cutscenes. There's actually a little bit more focus on the character interactions and their relations with each other, which does make things a lot more interesting. And this is not just during the levels, but during the cutscenes between levels as well. And I was surprised to learn that they've actually tied the introductions to the game, like with cutscenes and telling us more about the world and the characters and the overall story, with the training. So the training area, which does look dramatically different, it's not just gameplay but cutscenes that play that show your interactions with the different members of the Star Fox crew. And so, for example, we're getting a better understanding of Pepe's distance perspective since he's from an older generation, but also him wanting to teach the others. And then we're also getting a better understanding of Slippy and his smarts, but also his weakness as a pilot, and perhaps most interestingly, the relationship between Fox and Falco, the rivalry there. We're seeing a lot more about how competitive they are with each other. We're seeing even elements to show how there could be dramatic struggles with the team here. Like when you play through Star Fox 64, the original, you're not going to really see too much that suggests a struggle with the team. But from what we're hearing about here, from some of the footage we've seen of the cutscenes in the preview footage, we are seeing that there's legitimate struggle, there's legitimate drama within the Star Fox team, and this is actually incredible news in my opinion. Because the reason they would be adding cutscenes like this would be to help deliver a more compelling, more interesting story, and give us a more rich take on the world where we could learn actually a lot more. And there's going to be real conflict here between the characters, which typically is a good sign for a good story here. So we're getting a lot of good signs that the story that's being told with Star Fox this time around is going to be interesting, and to be honest, even though this is a remake, in a lot of ways I'm left with the impression we're going to be learning a lot more about the world of Star Fox here, and this might be the best told story yet in the entire series. It might not even be close. Like, it's actually really interesting that the training area is actually like VR, and so we see them leave the training mission taking off these virtual reality sets. Like, that's such a cool little detail. And so I'm just very excited about what's being done here with Star Fox, and yet I still have more I want to say. So I didn't know this, but apparently the character that gives you advice in the training mode, he has a name, Yadu Depan. And what I find even more interesting about this is that we have seen that Yadu Depan is actually a character that you can use for the AI camera stuff, when you plug in a camera and it can map a Star Fox character to your facial expressions. But there's also a whole bunch of other slots here. And so it leads me to think that we're likely going to be able to unlock a whole bunch of other characters, at least for this camera stuff, like Cat, or a lot of the other enemies we fight during boss fights and such, or even James McCloud. But then it also has me wondering, could these characters be unlocked to be playable at some point, too? That we don't know. We don't know about unlockable stuff. Some people are concerned that there's only 3 different multiplayer levels, even though each multiplayer level is very different from each other. And so we don't know what kind of content will be unlocked, but what we do know is that there is at least this AR stuff to unlock, which may suggest there are other things to unlock. Prior Star Fox games have had unlockables, perhaps that will be here too. Like, some people are wondering, is there any way to play Landmaster in a multiplayer mode? And from what we've seen so far, no, but what if there is another stage to be unlocked for multiplayer? That remains to be seen. And yet there's even more we've learned a little bit about. So for the Corneria stage, Falco actually does give you a little bit more of an obvious hint as to how to unlock the alternate path. And it seems like there might be some mixed feelings on this. My personal take, I think this is a good thing. The other day I was talking about how I fear there are going to be people who are going to play the Star Fox game and not realize that they're not getting the full experience when they just play through it from beginning to end once and get to the credits, because the game is designed to play through it multiple times, going for higher scores, but also doing different routes, seeing all the different levels. There's actually a lot of different levels to play through, but you cannot get through them all in one go. There are different routes. So I actually think it's a good thing that the dialogue within the levels would be making it more clear how you can go to these alternate paths. That doesn't necessarily make it easier, in my opinion. It's just giving you a more evident clue as opposed to just doing random stuff and finding out eventually. Maybe. In most cases, people will just have to Google it to figure out how to do these other levels. So I personally think this is actually a very smart choice, and I don't actually think this is a hit to the game's difficulty. Reminder, this time around, they actually have difficulty settings you can pick from the very beginning, and while there may be some challenge to access different routes, the routes themselves may not be where all the difficulty lies, but literally the difficulty setting, or perhaps it'll be a little bit of a combination. That part we're not clear on. Either way though, I think overall this is a smart decision, so more people can appreciate more of Star Fox here. And another little thing I'll point out before I close out here, the boss fight where you're fighting the mechs in space, they're a lot more visible. You can see lights emanating from them. And what I remember of that fight, they're actually very hard to see in space for the N64 original, but here they're more visible. So some people might not like that, but also personally I thought it was kind of dumb that you could not really see them. However, I don't think I can fully judge it until I play through that section myself, because I do also think that for the original boss fight, not being able to see them added to the difficulty. So is there any difficulty balancing here to kind of make up for the fact that they're now visible? We shall see. But that's everything I noticed from all this recent Star Fox news. What do you make of it all? Is there anything else you noticed? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. If you've gone this far and you found yourself enjoying the video and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, but I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.